Hey, what's up? Enjoying your blended family. You are in for a treat today because this is not your typical podcast from Enjoying Your Blended Family. It's actually a book club. And I don't know if you've ever been a part of a book club. To be honest, I've never been a part of a real book club, a real grown up book club. Me and my stepdaughter Riley, we do our own book club where we read books and then we discuss the books, but I've never been a part of a whole group. But there is a very special book that is out that we want to highlight this month because at the end of this month, Blended Kingdom Families is having their big conference, their big breakthrough conference. So I thought, how cool would it be that if we as a group can kind of do our own little book club here together? And I've invited a couple different guests to come on and talk about their thoughts on the book as well. So we're getting different perspectives. You're hearing different stories. So just know that as of this is day one, chapters 1 and 2 that we're going to be discussing on Blended and Redeemed. It's by Scott and Vanessa from Blended Kingdom Family. And then I have Ginger from the Family Core who is on here with me, and I will have her introduce herself in just here in a second and ask her some questions about the book. But just so you know, in order to be a part of the book club, if you want to be official, you just need to go on and order your copy. It looks just like this of Blended and Redeemed, or they have the audio version. Or if you really, if you can't get your own copy right now, send me a message and I'm going to work something out with you. But I just need to know that you got the book and that you're part of the book club because we're going to have a special drawing at the end of this book club so that you have a chance to go to the conference for free. So that is a whole lot happening, a whole lot of good stuff happening here in this episode. And right after this, we're going to get into it and you're going to get to talk with Ginger from the Family Core.
Hey, welcome to Enjoying Your Blended Family. I'm Randall.
And I'm Scarlett.
This podcast is all about strengthening your blended family relationships
And having more fun.
giving you hope and encouragement so everyone is enjoying the journey together. New episodes come out every Monday and Friday. Mondays, we talk on a hot topic that are in blended families.
And Fun Fridays are all about ideas you can use to create more fun memories together in your family.
We truly believe the more fun you have together, the less problems you'll see.
So let's have some fun and enjoy this episode.
All right, so we're back. Now, first things first, I want Ginger to tell us just a little bit about herself and the Family Core app. And then, Ginger, will you share with us something that really stood out to you in chapter 1 of Blended and Redeemed?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Ginger. I'm from the Family Core. I have a blended family with 5 children. And my husband and I going through the fire. I think the first chapter is talking about refining in the fire in the Blended and Redeemed book. We have walked through quite a fire. My husband and I had an 8-year custody battle that came alongside us in blending our family. And we had a lot of similarities with Scott and Vanessa in reading their testimony. So in that first chapter 1, I had made some notes that, first they ask you in the end of the chapter, they have several questions for you that you can go back and reflect on, which I think is completely healthy, whether you're in a book club like this, or you're walking through this with your spouse and you guys want to bring up discussion topics for each other so that it makes your process easier, or you're doing it in a community like a small group. Blended Kingdom Families supports and has curriculum for small groups also. And so this is another opportunity for you to go through those questions with people that have either walked through what you're going through, have the experience that you don't have at this point. But James and I love to hear Scott and Vanessa preach. And in the first chapter 1, I think their first question is, what has the Holy Spirit said to you about this? And what James and I found so important in our redeeming of our blend is that it was so important for us to find a community that was for us, that supported us. I think when you go through divorce and you go through remarriage or a custody battle, everybody feels like they need to take sides, and that can be dangerous. So you don't want to get on a battle side, or gather yourself with people that are quote unquote on your side. You want to gather yourself with community of people that are for you, that are for your marriage, that are for the growth of your children, that are for the growth of your blend, so that you can really kind of take that experience and know that you're supported in either biblical support, Christian community, or people that are just for your marriage in general. So that's what really stood out to me in that first chapter, that when you're going through the fire, that you don't let it burn you up and kind of spit you out on the other side, is that you find that community to protect you, to walk you through, just as their testimony was.
Yeah, and I love that y'all have that quote in here in the book as well, because, and in case you don't know, Vanessa and Scott, they started out doing a it was like a project, a blended family project, where they interviewed 100, 200 different families to really just gather as much information that they could to see, like, really, God, what do you have in store? Like, how can we help in this area? And Ginger and her husband, they were one of those couples that's how they met, was being interviewed and being asked these questions. So at the bottom, on page 7, it's "Stay the course. God is going to bring you through the storm," is a quote that they have in there. So just know, when you get the book and you look, you're like, oh yeah, I know her. I listened to her on the podcast as well. And I think the thing that sticks out really is the theme of chapter 1, refined in the fire, is this visual, for one, that they use the scripture of the 4 men, or the 3 men in the fire, and they're being persecuted, wrongly persecuted. They were standing up for what was right, and then they tried to harm them, and in the process they're like, they didn't get hurt, and they're like, who was that 4th guy? And that's ultimately, it was Jesus in the fire with them and protecting them and keeping them safe. And then Scott also uses the analogy of like your diamond, and it has to go through that process to be refined in that way, and that it starts out and it's not very pretty, and the process is painful, just like so many blended families. Before they get to that other side, we all go through, I feel like we all go through, maybe some people get out unscathed, but honestly, having been on the other side now, which is a couple of the next questions at the end of this chapter, I think those that go through the fire and make it through the other side, that God just really does something incredible and beautiful in there, just like that diamond that gets created. It's from that pressure and the process that creates something so beautiful. And so I love when they talked about that, but also, I mean, I was getting chills when Vanessa talks about her dreams and how God gave her this dream, this vision, and she was talking about this like wedding dress that looked like it had like been through the ringer, and then this journal that was left on in her dream, like a journal on the page, and this person's telling her, this is your new name, and she looks at it, and it says redeemed on there. And man, when I was reading it, I just got chills, because God speaks to me in dreams as well. And so to hear and know like where God has taken them to this point. I didn't know them in the beginning before they got here when it first started off. I've just seen some of these benefits here at the end of how much they are helping step families learn how to maneuver in their life. And so then to see like how the vision all started out, and how God had just spoke to her in multiple different ways, and how they went from a very painful process, if you read their story, and they do a great job of not throwing their co-parents like under the bus or anything, but like saying the story in a way where, like they went through some really hard times. And then they said, all right, God, like, how can we use this? And he was very clear in some direction for them. And then they've gone through and walked through that, and now helping so many different families. So I'm going to go over to the questions in the back and ask you, Ginger, So can you think of a time in your life when your family went through the fire? What caused it? How did you respond? And what advice would you impart to someone who's going through the fire in this season right now?
Sure. When I went through question 2, what came to mind for me was, like you talked about, being in the fire. And as a mom, this is just a mom's perspective. As a mom, we want our family to look, from the outside. Of course, you want it to look beautiful. You want everybody to be well cared for. You want, it's just like throwing a birthday party. You want it to go perfect, and you want those moments for your children almost on a daily basis. We go out of our way to do everything we can as a mom. And as a mom that is blending in a family, I had several instances where my character was brought into court of who I was, what my intentions were, how I took care of my children. I don't essentially call them stepchildren; they're my daughters. How I was taking care of them, the care that I had brought into the family with my son that I had brought in, and he brought in 2 girls, and my character was constantly questioned about who I was, who I am, what my intentions are. And I had never done anything to harm the children. I had never done anything in my past. I thought I was doing kind of a great job. But the system or the other individual is just there with the enemy to try and break you down. And I think that that's quoted very nicely in there, when Scott and Vanessa say that, the Bible says that evil is constantly on the prowl. So it was on the prowl when I'd take the kids to school. It was on the prowl when I'd pick them up. It was on the prowl when I would do homework, or how I did their hair, or how I dressed them. Or I absolutely could show you an email where I got a 3-page email on how to make a sandwich, or how to cool, what temperature meat should be cooled at when I sent their lunch to school, things like that. So you really have to not let your character, although that it is, the fire is put on you to burn you down, you really do have to let it refine you and get you out on the other side, and not let it become who you are, that you get so consumed by what is trying to prowl and attack you, that you do the best job that you can for your family. And so that was the circumstance that I thought about, was just a mother's character. Again, you have to look at every situation like blown glass. You may have the same materials, but the way that you spin and heat the glass and what God is doing to refine you is going to be different for you than it was for me. And I'm happy with the way it turned out. And I have to give credit to God that I always went back to him and say, what am I supposed to learn from this? How is this supposed to define my family, and what are the benefits I can take with it, and not let the rest of it burn me up, as my mother's character was always under fire. So that's what question number 2 actually was for me. And so I, just as advice, like you asked, as a mom, we always, go like to the worst case scenario, but you have to remember that God's walking before you, and he's always going to do what's best for you. You just have to continue to seek what his intention is.
Man, yeah. And hearing you say, like, because sometimes it's the most ridiculous things that parents can choose, co-parents can choose to get upset about. I mean, and I'm guilty of both. Like, I've been on both ends of this. Like, I've had messages sent to me how I could make my corn or vegetables taste more flavorful so that my children would not be forced to eat my unflavored food. And and I mean, silly stuff, like, because it was told that I made her eat the food off the floor. Like, sometimes they just come up with stuff because they just, I don't know, are getting creative. But then I've also been the mom on the other end, sending that information to my ex-husband on how he needs to do certain things in his household. Maybe not as far as the way they cook their food, but don't allow them to watch these kind of shows or eat this kind of food, or, stay up past this amount of time or be on technology or this kind of site. Like I've definitely have put my 2 cents in where it wasn't actually appreciated on.
Sure, I've been on both sides too. I'm guilty of it on both sides. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely am guilty of it on both sides.
Yes. And well, what's funny is that step families have so much other drama. Like, do we really need to get so nitpicky on the little things like that? Because there's going to be so many other harder things that we go through. And that's what, as I read that question and I think about it, I mean, so much of what we went through refined me and refined our marriage. It refined my children, and all of it in these ways that would not have been able to be possible had we not walked through the fire. I don't think that I would be the woman that I am now and the mom that I am now and have the relationship as close as I do now had I not been completely broke down to a point where I had to just completely rely on God and trust him to get me to the other side. And it built my faith. It's built my prayer life. It's made it to where I see my children for who God created them to be, instead of the judgmental, wondering like, okay, I need them to be this perfect little human or Christian that I was trying to raise them to be. My kids have learned how to be more independent because they had to be when they were outside of my care. I have learned that nobody is going to have my back like my husband and like our Lord does. Like he is the one. The court system will fail you over and over again. The police will fail you. Your co-parent will fail you. Your kids will fail you. I mean, and even my spouse will fail me, but God never did. He always was so consistent and faithful in everything that he did. So it's like all of these pieces have brought each of us to a better version of ourselves in the fire, that had we not walked through it, and we would have had just kind of like an average kind of family blending, that we would have just continued along this path instead of getting to the core of who we really are. I love seeing how God can break things off that don't belong there and make you stronger, a stronger person. So a question for you though, and number 5, discuss some ways you can arm yourself when walking through the wilderness season.
We're good at this. We had plenty of wilderness seasons. So like I said, we blended, and my hat goes off to God and my children. We drew a line in the sand when we had made the commitment to blend, and we said we are going to put church and the Lord at our center. So the kids knew when they transitioned and they transitioned back. At the time we had a 5-2-2-5 schedule, and church was non-negotiable. So keeping that in there, it gave the kids an outlet to transition back, and they knew they were going to church and they were going to be around their friends and their community, and they were serving, and that became a large part of their identity. And I think in each of our older 3 children's, the children that we blended's testimony was that they knew that was consistent. And so serving was consistent. They each served in different areas of the church. And we quickly came to find that our Bible verse for our family was Mark 10:9, that what God put together, let no man or let no one separate. And so we really held to that verse. When we were baptized as a family, we did it in a cycle. We were baptized. My husband was baptized. He turned and baptized me. We turned and baptized our son. My husband and my son turned and baptized his daughter, and then on to the next one. And we just had our middle daughter baptize our 9-year-old. And so we'll continue to do that and let no man separate. And that was big for us because, like I said, we ended up in an 8-year custody battle on one side, and we ended up parallel parenting on the other. Now, you have to, in those times, in those seasons, stand for what you know is right. And we knew that keeping him at the foundation was the right thing. And I think that most with the average second marriage, the percentage for today is 60% of marriages will fail and blendings will fail because they don't have a foundation. They don't know what they stand for. They don't have a center with their family so that they can all come back and know that there's no question on where your family stands and where you're going to be in even the difficult seasons, in the good seasons and the bad. But James and I, in our wilderness season, kept a moral compass on the Lord. And then we realized that we can only control what is under our roof. And you can never forget that. Once the kids, you have to prepare the kids enough that when they walk out the door, and that starts their own season, because children that transition have a completely different lifestyle than normal biological kids that were raised under your roof, and then you kind of set them free. A child that shares between two homes has such a demographic that we don't even see. And so when people say, how did you do it with the kids? It's keeping God in the center, and then only controlling what's under our roof, and hoping and praying that once they walk out that door, that we've done our job and we've given them a focus that they can then direct themselves to in their seasons of life. So that's what I would say in 5 is that for question 5 is pick a verse, make it solid with your family. Know that that's a solid centered verse in your family, so that in any season that not only you and your spouse, but your children, once they walk out the door, they can turn to that and find guidance.
Yeah, and I love that, because the enemy will put that thought like, this is never going to stop. This is never going to go away. And then if you have that verse for your family, you immediately can say, no, what God put together, no man can destroy. And you just keep saying it over and over each time the thought comes out. And then that equips your children to do the same thing. So great advice right there, and keeping God in the middle. I know for me, like my biggest advice would be, and you also said, control only what you can control, because there's so many different parts of the advice, but I don't think we would have made it had Randall and I not been praying parents. Both individually, we would pray on our own because we cannot change anybody else, but God can, and he can change any circumstance, and he can take anything, which you see in Vanessa and Scott's story as well, something that seems impossible, and he can turn things around. So when you're seeking him, but then also praying together as a couple was huge. When Randall and I, we wouldn't do it all the time. We didn't do it until about probably when we got into the hardest season, and our oldest, Riley, when she moved to go live with her mom, we began to come together and pray together, and we would speak words out loud and declare God's promises. And then we would get a phone call, or we would, we would get unblocked, or it was like, it truly was like God giving us these little glimpses of hope every single time we would come together and pray. And we're like, why don't we do this more often? No, we'll sit here and complain about it all day long. Why don't we stop and pray? And so we would get to a point where we finally would say, we've talked this to death. Like, we can't, you can see all my notes on here on my hands, but we've talked this to death. Let's pray about it. And then God would show up faithfully. And in the book, she also highlighted some things that you can do. So I want to read those, and then we're going to move into chapter 2. That things that you can do is focus on your spouse and your marriage, because again, that is something inside your control. On loving and raising your children, both your biological and step. Managing the complicated relationships with the ex, showing them love and respect as your children's mother or father. And ultimately, by honoring God and raising faithful, Christ-loving, world-changing boys and girls in the next generation of godly men and women. So that is just a little section of chapter 1 that I had noted as well. And I was like, that's some great reminders, because I think we do forget in the midst of all the drama how important our marriage is, and that our kids need our marriage to be strong, because if our marriage fails, now they have walked through and saw 2 failed marriages. They need to see a healthy, strong relationship modeled for that way. Now, chapter 2 to me is vital, and I think it was actually Scott and Vanessa's one of their main purposes that God gave them was to create a resource for the churches. When they thought of this book and they created it, they want people like you, Ginger, and people like me and Randall, and for anyone else that's listening right now, you don't have to be a pastor to be able to do this, or you don't even have to have a bunch of schooling or anything. They want people who have a heart for step families, and especially if you've gone through it, to take this book and to become a resource in your church. And what they found all throughout these interviews that they did, I think almost like 200 interviews or something, I think it said 6 families said, yeah, my church has had some sort of resource. And out of that, like only a few of those had current, like active things that you could get involved in. Have you seen that in your own church, Ginger? Like, do y'all have something put in place, or have y'all been a part of that in your church?
Well, I have to say that I'm super proud of our church. James and I attend a mega church here in Arizona. And when we approached our executive staff, they were immediate to say, we're on it. We've already researched it. We want your input on it. We want to get things in place. Here's the resources that we have found. What resources are you thinking of? Let's immediately get those through the content team so that we can get this information out, not only to the congregation or the associate pastors and campus pastors, but then also looking to create small groups. So if you were to, I know that when Scott and Vanessa did this research, you're looking at an older fellowship type of congregation to where divorce and blended families there's a lot of shame that come with that. But statistics show over the last 5 to 7 years, divorce has actually decreased in the US. But prior to that, the statistic was that now it's only 60% of second marriages fail. Not that long ago, it was 72% of second marriages fail. So I think that churches and communities are starting to come alongside, recognizing that over 50% of their congregation in the church community is from some type of blended family, whether it's they're a married couple, but they came from step or divorced parents, or there's more single parents that are involved, because I know the statistic is almost staggering to find out how many women actually appear at the hospital without a spouse or a partner with the child. And so I think the churches are trying to do a better job. My hat goes off to Scott and Vanessa for actually challenging the church and the church community to say, hey, that we're not condemning you for it, but what are we going to do about it to fix it? So I think that, like you said, this is what they got from their research and questioning God. We went through this. Now, what should we do with it? I think that Scott and Vanessa and you and Randall and James and I are in that same position. And I think a lot of people that are in these positions of trying to approach blended families and how to take care of them better in a godly way, it's to show them love and not shame. And so if we can love people where they're at in whatever season, whether they're going through divorce, walking divorce, co-parenting, custodies, situations, things like that. There didn't used to be resources. Now there's a lot more resources emerging. So I think, again, my hat goes off to the churches that are actually honoring requests from their congregation and doing something about it. There is a lot more out there for resource than you can imagine. And it stretches from you being in a small group with your church community. It stretches to being on an online social community, like you guys support the B family through Enjoying Your Blended Family. Blended Kingdom Families launched a blended family teens so that teens can get support, because a lot of the people that get lost in the cracks are the kids. And so having resources that provide support for every single person that's going through this season, whether it be young kids, middle-aged kids, young adults that are now approaching a divorce in their circumstance. There's a lot better resources now. So yes, our church has addressed it. They're definitely underway to making sure that everybody has the resources that they need. And that comes along with, like you said, you questioning what's out there for me. How can I connect with other single moms that are going through divorce, dads that are single dads are going through divorce, or blended couples that need support.
Yeah, I love that your church has, especially the being a mega church, has embraced that. And I know, having been pastors, youth pastors and children's pastors, like having worn that hat for a short season, I know that it is impossible, and they mention this in the book as well. It is impossible to meet the needs, the pastors themselves, to meet the needs of every single group and need that is inside of their church. And it takes us as a body of Christ, that's why we make up the church, to do our parts in these things. And Scott mentions in here, he says, he goes, how many resources do you think I found when I went looking for step family resources? And he says 0. And he like, but how many did I find, or like, how many did I actually go searching for? And the answer is 0, that you don't know what you don't know. And this is so true. Like when you're in the middle of it, you don't even realize, like, that this is an issue. This is a problem behind our closed doors. But like you were saying, Ginger, there's so much shame attached with the fact that you are divorced coming into a church that you don't want to talk about it. The preachers, they don't know how to handle it. And they cover that in the book as well. And I've seen this firsthand in churches that I've attended, and then also just in what we're doing on social media, that Christians can be really mean. Sometimes our worst comments come from Christians that we're living in sin because what we're doing, and Vanessa talks about that in the book as well. And our pastors don't know how to approach it. So a lot of times they just stay quiet on the subject because they're afraid if they talk about it, they're giving people a license to get divorced. If you say, God loves you even though you're divorced, then people will be like, oh, let me go sign the divorce papers instead of doing the hard work it takes to stay married. So our pastors, they don't want to give us a license to sin. But then also, if they're over here not talking about it at all, then people are going without any kind of resources or help, and they're feeling all of that shame that is on there. So there has to be some sort of balance. And I do think churches now, I think social media has done a great job of allowing people to talk more openly about the things that normally we would keep secret in our own private behind our doors. And that has opened up some doors in the churches as well. But like I was saying, for us, when we had that one video that went viral with it was something about, and I'm the one that created it, but people were attacking because Randall was the face of him dancing around saying, would I be single forever? Or I thought I was going to be a single dad forever, but God. And then I come like dancing out the side and saying, but God brought me someone. And until that point, I had no idea that other Christians were out there just thinking that we're living in sin every single day because we've remarried after divorce because there wasn't like death, like our ex-spouses hadn't died. So now because we remarried, now we're living in sin. And I went on this whole path of having to research that afterwards. And then Vanessa actually had sent me an interview they did with Jimmy Evans, which they talk about in the book as well, where he explains, like, we serve a God who forgives murderers. If he can forgive a murderer, you're trying to say he can't forgive you for getting pregnant outside of marriage, or he won't forgive you for your divorce failing? Like, what kind of belief system is that? And so it really, it helped me grow as a person for the Christians to attack in that way. But it was just eye-opening to me, like, how sad is that? Because that means they're coming in contact with other people that are just as broken, and they're walking away. People should walk away from us feeling hope. when they see Jesus, they should see light and hopeful, not walking away hopeless. And so that was just a lot of the different things that I was really pulling out from this chapter. Was there anything else that really stood out?
You brought that into light, and we had talked about that even in chapter 1, is that if you don't surround yourself with a community that is for you and your new spouse and your new, what we consider a new nuclear family, it's very difficult because there's a lot of judgment outside of that, and there's a lot of people that haven't walked your circumstance that don't know. And I think that if by not surrounding yourself, by not equipping yourself with the proper information and what the truth is of God loving you, even though we got divorced and now we're remarried. God didn't intend for any of us to be alone. And because your first marriage did not work, or your the lifestyle did not work, he never meant for any of us to be alone. So I think that, like I had said before, your children, your spouse, and you all deserve to have a community that is for you and not continue to have people. There's plenty of people pouring in that are against you. And so surrounding yourself with a community, whether it be in your church, or I know I listed a few resources like Family Life Blended with Ron Deal. He's got resources. There's grief that comes along with it. You need to read about and walk with people that have been through that grief, that have come out on the other side. Focus on the Family does another great job. They're out of Colorado. Focus on the Family has just a plethora of information so that you can, again, surround yourself with community and resources. Blended Kingdom Families, Blended Kingdom Teens, Enjoying Your Blended Family. And then, of course, if you're somebody that needs to be in a small group in your local church and they don't have one that is ran or supported with blended information, reach out. Blended Kingdom Families just released a series. I believe it's a 10-week series. Start to get in a group with people that walk your walk. It's very difficult to go to a small group in your church and hear about how everybody's marriage is perfect and nobody understands the unique dynamics that come along with blended families. I would say take the step of faith like Scott and Vanessa did. Question your church. Ask them what they can provide. Ask them what their belief is on divorce and remarriage or blended families. That way you can get the resource and surround yourself with people that are for you and not against you.
Yeah, and I think most churches, if you approached it in that way and you wanted to be a part of the solution and say like, hey, I'm not saying I'm an expert or anything, but I've walked through this and I know that, maybe even name a few couples that are also blended families as well, and just say, I'm willing to take this resource and give them the resource, show them what you want to use, and let them look it over and say, I'm willing to do this and, commit to the next 5 weeks or 10 weeks. And if we could just, advertise it here at the church, and anybody that wants to come together and we can work through this book and talk about the question it has. And you're so right. I have 2 different small groups that I go to, because when Randall and I married, we had 2 different churches. And so I have the small group from the church that I was raised in. And somehow, by the grace of God, it's like 6 women and I'm the only one divorced, remarried. And so all of their children have mom and dad in their household, which is very abnormal in itself in the small church that it is. The fact that they have been able to all like remain married, it's amazing. But it makes me and my children look like black sheeps because we have this drama always. If it was a Christmas play, I couldn't just sign my kids up and get them to the practice because they're at their dad's, and so they're missing every other week, and now they're getting in trouble by the music director because they wasn't at practice last time. And so it was always like we felt like these misfits. And now I'm a part of another small group that we call them life groups, and we meet on Wednesday nights instead of at church. You go into people's homes, and we prayed about which group to join in, and then we just picked one randomly from what we felt God leading us. And as we sat there and began to share a little bit of our story, and then hearing everyone else, it was like we're in a room full of misfits together. Like we were all blended families. It was insane. Like even the ones that I didn't realize they were, but maybe their child is divorced. And so they're going through the court battles and the custody and everything, walking that through their child. As we were able to talk about these things. And as I'm sharing my story, I have this girl that's about 10 years younger than me that's walking through the fire at that very moment, similar to what I had already walked through. And she came afterwards. She's like, it's like you're telling my story. Like when you're talking, it's just breaking my, spirit in a good way, because it's like somebody else understands. And that's how God can use all of us. And we need, just like you said, Ginger, we need people surrounding us that can help understand that, and that can speak life into that, or can just say like, what you're talking about right now, I have no answers for you, but I know exactly what you're going through, and I will just sit here and cry with you. Or here's a scripture that God placed on my heart when I was dealing with this. If he helped me, then maybe it'll help you as well. So when we have that kind of community, God is able to restore things in that way. And so, yes, so right. And there's so much, I think we could probably keep talking, um, because there's just so many good things here. But for chapter 1 and 2, I think we got like some really good points out. And our goal here in our virtual book club isn't that we do all of it, talk on all of it for you, but that you get the book and read it yourself. We pulled out some really important parts. And now, okay, what can we do with this? Either because you're still in the fire and you need this information, and read it and let it soak in and change your family now, or how can you take this and go help somebody else and really begin to ask God, okay, Lord, what do you want me to do with this information? Put somebody in my path that I can disciple during this time period of their life, whether it be in my own home or it be in the church, in that kind of way. Ginger, is there anything else that you want to add?
Looking through chapter 2 and just kind of summing it up between Scott and Vanessa and what they said in chapter 2, and even speaking with them, something that James and I do often is that we don't forget that we're all like, let's say, cell phones. We're all like cell phones. You use it throughout the day. You're on it. You're getting depleted. You're like a cell phone. You're getting depleted throughout the day. You're taking information, you're spitting information out, you're working hard, you're doing all these things. But at the end of the night, we all take that and go put it on a charger. And I think that, with your spouse, praying with your spouse through these seasons, reconnecting with your children once everybody's home and the door is shut and it's time, that you don't continue to dwell on what fire you're walking through, but you're actually taking an opportunity to blend and build your family in this time also. And so remember to, go through your day, and yes, you get depleted, but when you get home, recharge with your spouse, recharge with your children, extra recharge when your kids aren't home and they're at the other parents and they're away from you. Because if you're not recharged, you can't pour back into your family. So stay in prayer with your spouse, stay in prayer with your children, and also stay in good connection, just you and God alone, because having that at your center helps you pour into other people that are in your community, but most importantly to your spouse and your children.
Yes, so true. That right there is golden, and you do need to plug in and charge. And there's different ways to do that, and different people get recharged in different ways. Definitely God being our number one source with that. And so before we wrap up, 2 things I want to point out. And again, this is chapter 1 and 2. So we're going to be doing this series through September, because the Breakthrough Conference with Blended Kingdom Family is September 30th. You have a couple of different ways to attend. You can attend in person, and it's near Dallas. The town is South Lake.
Mm-hmm.
South Lake, Texas. So if you're like, we're about 5 or 6 hours away, so we're just, making the drive and going to make a weekend out of it. But if you can in any way get signed up and get in, it has just grown from this like luncheon kind of thing they had 2 years ago to last year, where, we were packing out a room like the sanctuary. And then now we're going to be, I think, going even bigger this year. So if you can get there in person, do that. And if you join our book club, just send me a DM, send me an email, something letting me know that you're a part of it. I'm going to put your name in a raffle. And we have 4 tickets to give away. So I'm thinking we'll do 2 sets. We'll have 2 different couples because we would really like for you and your spouse to go do this together. So either go ahead and get your ticket now or join the book club, get your name in the raffle, a chance to win free tickets. They also opened it up virtually. So if you can't for some reason get there in person, you can purchase a ticket and you and your spouse can watch it live. And I think you have access to it for like maybe a month or a certain period of time that you can watch that when it's convenient for you. And I'm telling you, what we encountered last year, you don't want to miss it. That is a way to refresh yourself and recharge yourself in your blended family, doing something like this every year where you go and you leave there with so much hope afterwards. And then something else that you can do, and I just want to highlight this because James and Ginger are they're incredible. They have taken what the enemy has tried to use against them, and they turned and made something amazing for families, and that is the Family Core app. And so what you need to do is go to your app store. You need to type in the Family Core, and there is an app that helps you keep your step family, your blended family organized. There's so many different functions on there that you can utilize, from being able to just scan in all of your important documents that you have to share with co-parents, scheduling different kids events, just like our last episode was over extracurricular activities. And there's just so much mental load that comes with being in a step family, all of the different schedules, the different appointments, and that usually falls on the shoulders of one person in the house. If that's you, I'm assuming if you're listening to this podcast, it's probably you, because you like to improve yourself, improve your family. Take the time to download that, and only one person is like the main holder of it, and it's $4.99. I mean, really, like, you spend more than that on the most ridiculous things all week long. You pay that for the month, and then you have access for the rest of your family to have the app on their phone as well. It has a geo tracker on there. I know, like, me and my kids, they're even grown now, and we have each other on their tracker. It just makes life easier for us to know where the others are. There's chat features on there. There's just so many different positive things that are going to help take that mental load off your shoulders, and then help you better communicate with your spouse, because y'all are going to be on the same page. There's task list, to-do list on there. It emails it to you. Then it's going to help you keep up with your family in your own home, and then also share that information with your co-parents. So relieve yourself of the stress of all the other things you're having to memorize by go ahead and getting that on the app.
You're hired. You're our spokeswoman now.
I was gonna say, did I get all the features?
You hit it all and beyond. Thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome. Well, and I want to highlight, because Ginger she is one of like my biggest cheerleaders. When I need her, she says, yep, I'll be there, sign me up. And I'll be a very last minute person. Like, I have this wonderful idea. Will you do it with me? And she's like, yep, let's do this. So you're always encouraging me, and y'all have put in the blood, sweat, and tears of making this app accessible and easy and affordable for families. And I wish we would have had it when we were raising the kids. I think it probably would have cut our disagreements with the co-parents in half, because we would have been on the same page more often, and we wouldn't have to like go back and forth with the same kind of stuff that would frustrate us. So again, get on the Family Core. You can see the background there. It has a little purple with a house on it, the Family Core, and get that downloaded. And then we will have Ginger on again for the book club. So stay tuned for that. And I'm excited. So get your book so that you can get read up with us. I don't know if that's the right way to say that. You can read along with us and be a part of our virtual book club. All right, guys. Until next time, remember to enjoy your blended family. Bye.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope this episode has been a blessing and encouraged your family journey.
Make sure you stay connected with us and join our weekly Blended Family newsletter. We send an email out every Friday morning full of support and encouragement.
And when you join, we also want to give you a free gift. So go get yours today. The link is in the show notes below.
Have an amazing day. Remember to enjoy the journey with your blended family, and we'll see you on the next episode.